So once again, welcome to the session. And in today's session, you want to look at contingency-based pay. What is contingency-based pay? When you are looking at pay structures, you are looking at how to offer salaries to our employees. The ones on permanent and pensionable terms, the one on contract terms, you pay them a salary. Because the fundamental question in reward is you ask yourself, what is it that you value as an organization, and what are you prepared to pay for? That which you value and that which you are prepared to pay for forms the basis for your rewarding your employees. So that when we talk contingent-based pay, we are looking at other aspects of remuneration that is dependent on, contingent on either performance or skill or competence or contributions or skills or length of service that the employee has had with the organization. That the administration of contingent-based pay is done either targeting the individual or targeting the collective in the organization as a whole. That when we administer individual contingent-based pay, we look at the individual performance, we look at the individual competence, we look at the individual overall contributions, we look at the skills level, we look at the length of service, and determine how the individual is to be compensated. So that in the nature of individual contingent-based pay is we are looking at aspects of remuneration that primarily are variable. They will change from time to time, depending on changes in these dynamics that we are raising, contribution, performance, competence, etc. Also, as an organization, you must have a framework in place that you will be using for measuring or assessing performance, competence, contribution, skills, rating, and then using the results to determine how you will be rewarding, you will be compensating the employees. So contingent-based pay is an aspect of reward, critical to how you will reward your employees, but more important, you have to evaluate and determine variables: performance, competence, skills, length of service, contribution, and use them as the basis for determining these variable rewards that employees will get as part of their total package. Individual competence-based reward schemes act as a huge motivator to employees, because you are looking at employees are working for the organization, and the organization has to reward them. In rewarding the employees, you bring in motivators, so that for you to be able to achieve the desired levels of motivation, then you want to have in place a framework for rewarding employees that the employees feel recognized, appreciated, and sufficiently rewarded. So when you roll out a competence-based scheme, here we are having a package that you meet the reward needs of the employees, you motivate them, you provide them with an incentive that is predominantly financial in nature. The employees appreciate the fact that the organization is willing, is able to go the extra mile to reward them using additional financial rewards. These allow them to be able to achieve their individual reward needs better when there is a contingent-based reward package. So several arguments have been advanced against or for the rollout of individual contingent-based pay schemes. We are able to recognize and reward better performance. We are able to recognize and reward employees well so that you can attract and retain quality labor to work for the organization. When you roll out such a competence-based reward scheme, you ensure that the overall organizational performances, not only the individual performances, but the broad organizational performances will improve. You want to make sure that you identify the key results areas and the elements that you value as an organization. Then you have the employees focus their attention on these to better achieve the organization's objectives. You're able to communicate to all the message as to the performance expectations that you have of the employees, and you are prepared to go the extra mile and reward them better. You motivate, you influence behavior, and also you can support culture change in the organization if we have an individual-based contingent reward system. That notwithstanding, there are arguments that have been advanced against the rollout of individual contingent-based schemes. These arguments against would include, for the most part, it may be questionable as a motivator, because if the scheme is not administered well, then it may not achieve the desired levels of motivation. When you want to roll out a contingent-based scheme and use it to reward employees, what will be required to achieve success may be a bit, the threshold may be a bit high for employees to achieve, that you almost end up with a scheme that is in place, is intended to offer additional reward, but almost always none of the employees will achieve the desired targets, objectives, etc. We focus on rewarding and paying additional compensation in monetary terms. But there is a realization in organizations that almost always money is not the sole motivator for behavior of employees. That we almost treat employees in a, let me use unfair manner. You look at them as people who are just out for money. It's like they don't have any other career goals other than pursuit of monetary rewards. So we recognize that there are other objectives that employees may have beyond financial. But when it is a contingent-based pay scheme, the overall thinking is almost like these people are in it just for money. So that so long as you will improve the package and how much they will be getting, then they will rush like dogs and pursue it. So if you don't roll out the scheme as you intend, then it will create more dissatisfaction if there is perception or if there is a real feeling of unfairness where the organization is felt to be mismanaging the scheme. That you employees themselves feel that some aspect of reward are administered in a manner that generally they do not agree with. The bonuses are distributed in a manner that generally there is no consensus that the scheme is administered in a fair manner. When such happens, these are some of the arguments that are advanced against the rollout of individual-based contingency schemes. That managers are, for the most part, perceived to be unfair in judgment, so that they are impartial, they are prejudiced, they are inconsistent, they are ill-informed in evaluating, in assessing performance, for example, and then using that result to be the basis for rewarding. When contingency-based schemes are rolled out, we are in it for the money, so that other critical aspects of the work, quality, teamwork, may be put aside, because the focus is, what do I do to get more money? That is the focus that the employees will have. These are, and many others are, arguments that have been advanced against the rollout of individual-based performance-related, individual-based contingency schemes. That notwithstanding, many contingency-based schemes have succeeded in organizations. The question we want to ask is, what are some of the organizations getting right that ensure they succeed in rollout of the schemes that others do not get right? So that the criteria for success in rollout of a contingency-based scheme. One, you want to have clarity. Between what I am doing as an individual and the rewards that I will get at the end of it. That if that is assured, you know what you are doing or what is expected of you and the rewards that you will receive at the end of the period, then you are more likely to roll out a scheme that employees will embrace and it will succeed in terms of achieving its intended objectives. Number two, the rewards that you want to offer should be worth having. That you want employees to put in that extra effort, they should value the rewards that you are rolling out sufficiently to want to put in that extra effort. The scheme should be administered in a manner that is fair and consistent. That as we measure performance, competence, contribution, skills, the measures that we are using should be fair and administered in a consistent manner that everybody feels they have been dealt with fairly. We are looking at situations where, for example, if you are rolling out a performance-based scheme, then the individual should be able to adjust, to change their behavior, to achieve the desired behavior and be rewarded for the change in behavior. If it is skills you want to reward for, it should be possible for the individual to go back for training, acquire additional skills for which they will be compensated. And number 5, we are looking at a situation where the rewards should come as close as possible to the accomplishments set. Not waiting, we are in 2021 is when you say you want to pay a bonus for targets that were achieved in 2019. You lose it. So for you to succeed, what is to be done and what one will get should be clearly set out. The rewards that the individuals will get should be worth it. There has to be a fair and consistent means of measuring and assessing performance, contribution, skills, competence. The people should be possible. It should be possible for the employees to change their behavior, to develop competence, skills, enhance their contributions, etc., for which they will be rewarded. And ultimately, the rewards should come as close as possible to the achievement, accomplishment of the objectives. When you do that, you roll out a competency-based, contingent-based pay scheme that will achieve the desired objectives. Any question or comment? Any question? In your organization, anyone who has a bonus scheme in the organization where they earn bonuses maybe at the end of the period depending on their performances? Anyone? Or a scheme where salaries are increments are pegged on an assessment of their performances? Anyone? So you don't have bonuses in your organizations? Nor schemes where salary increments are pegged on performance assessment? Anyone who works in a government agency or in the public, in the civil service? So if you look at the civil service, the increment is primarily based on number of years of service. With every year of service, you get an increment. In many private sector agencies, you will get the increments that the individuals will receive may be based on performance assessment, or maybe based on them getting some cost of living adjustments in line with inflation, prevailing inflation rates. Or a bonus may be rolled out based on performance. So types of individual contingency-based schemes. Type number 1, we have performance-related pay schemes. Performance-related pay schemes are rolled out as part of the broader performance management framework. Now, the performance management framework has 5 key components that you want to look at. You want to look at objective setting, or opportunity support, training and development, performance measurement, and performance appraisal. On the basis of this framework, then you will roll out performance-related pay. That in objective setting, what we're doing is we set goals, performance goals for the period under review. These should be strategic in nature, should be long-term, and not just that you are set targets on your routine day-to-day job. So we'll be looking at the targets that we set. We look at the extent to which they contribute to critical elements like innovation, cost control, operational efficiency. These are the objectives in these areas are what we'll be using to evaluate your performances. We talk about objectives being SMART. Number two, we have opportunity support. For opportunity support, we are looking at the organization being able to create that enabling environment for the employee to work towards achieving the objectives. You want to be able to provide the necessary machinery, tools, and equipments, clear work procedures, fair rules and regulations, proper guidance, supervision, leadership for the employees to be enabled to perform. Number three, we talk about training and development. That you know what the employees are to do in terms of the objectives. Then you ask, are there any deficiencies in skills that are inherent that you can address through training programs so as to equip the employees with the skills and competence that they need to work towards achieving the objectives. So through training, you empower the employees to perform. So once you've created an enabling environment, you've empowered the employees, then you roll out the performance. They work over the period towards achieving the set performance targets. On a continuous basis, you measure performance, you record, you guide as necessary. Then the results of this performance measurement are used to help the individual improve over the period of the performance. You can offer some counseling. You can guide on how better to perform. And then we'll use these results in the final stage that we call performance appraisal. This will be a meeting that will be held between the supervisor and the employee at the end of the period, where we'll be reviewing your actual results against the objectives set at the beginning of the period, trying to understand what is it that enabled you to easily meet and surpass your targets, what hindered you from meeting and surpassing your targets. That over the period, you want to look at the variances between the actual results that will have been attained vis-a-vis the targets that were intended at the beginning of the period. Then we begin to understand how the individual performed. What challenges did they encounter that may have contributed to them easily meeting, surpassing, or failing to meet the performance target? Then once we understand the performances for the period and the factors that may have contributed, then we set targets for the next period. That if you easily met and surpassed your target, to even set you more challenging targets for the next period. Depending on how you perform, we may set you more challenging targets, or we may even retain the same targets or even lower the targets a bit. Then for the next performance period also, you want to look at performance and say, These are the outcomes that the individual has achieved. We need to use the results to reward the individual. It is these rewards that will act as an energizer to drive the individuals towards performing. So a performance-related pay scheme. Basically, we are looking at how the individual will perform for the period and the result achieved be the basis for rewarding the individual. So in a nutshell, that is a performance management framework. Set objectives, smart objectives, strategic in orientation. Offer the necessary support for the individual to work towards meeting the objectives. Train the individuals, then let them perform. As they perform, you measure the performances, and in the final analysis, you'll carry out a performance appraisal, which would be the basis upon which you will be rewarding your employees. So that the agreed targets, the performance measures that are in place, the actual results that would have been realized, the formula to be used in computing the rewards must all be clarified when you are introducing a performance-related pay scheme. So that aspect of rewarding based on performance comes within the broad framework of performance management. So what are the objectives of having a performance-related pay scheme? You will motivate staff. The high performers are driven because they know they will be rewarded. You will enhance the commitment levels of staff. They will identify more with the organization and be committed towards the organization and its mission if they know they will be rewarded sufficiently. Issues to do with reinforcing the culture and values that foster high levels of performance so that the organization strives to become a high performance organization is achieved when we roll out a performance-related pay scheme. Being able to consistently discriminate on performance so as to come up with an equitable distribution of rewards based on performance. Being able to deliver a message on the performance expectations of the organization to all the affected stakeholders, the managers, the employees themselves, the owners of the company. They know the performance expectations and the rewards that will be rolled out. Emphasizing on individual or team, depending on the performance measures that are in place. Is our focus on team-based rewards or on individual-based rewards? PRP schemes must speak to that. When we are out there competing to recruit, to retain talent, high performers are driven when there is a performance-related pay scheme as part of our reward system. Ultimately, when we do have a performance-related pay scheme, the pay is flexible based on performance. That you don't have situations where every year you pay and employees will expect to be rewarded whether or not their performances merit. So because of that, PRP schemes are there and they are popular. However, there are arguments that have been advanced against the rollout of these PRP schemes. For the most part, it becomes difficult to objectively measure performances, and it becomes like a subjective process. When we roll out such a scheme, we encourage people to focus on narrow tasks, or your job description maybe has 10 items, but the objectives against which you will get rewarded are only 5. So everything you do, just focus on the 5. Not the other elements in a job description may be disregarded. You are working to be rewarded so that you erode the intrinsic interest that employees may have in the job, in the tasks they perform. You only look at performing tasks against which you will be rewarded. Then once you meet your targets and surpass your targets, then you will find individuals focus on other things, not work. Then you have individuals who are selling rice in the office, selling clothing in the office, because they have extra time. They've already met and surpassed their target, so they focus on whatever you call side hustle, PRP schemes. Then we become very competitive, and it works against teamwork when we have PRP schemes. Then ultimately, we may have situations where some employees' pay increase so fast that there may be a distorting of the pay arrangements in your organization. That notwithstanding, PRP schemes are good and work for organizations. So as you are introducing PRP schemes, you want to be clear. You match the scheme with the corporate culture, critical factors to consider. Match scheme with the corporate culture so that there's a good fit. Have measures of performance that are both quantitative and qualitative. Like a school inspector may be told, make sure when you inspect schools, inspect at least 10 schools per week. That inspection is not going to the office to meet the principal and he signs your workbook. Inspection is about a holistic engagement. Go and meet the principal, meet the teachers, meet the students, assess the dining, assess the library, assess all the other facilities so that there is qualitative and quantitative measures. Factor number 3, be able to link PRP scheme with the business strategy so that critical elements, product development, innovation, profitability are the areas you'll be focusing on as you introduce PRP schemes. The objectives against which you will be rewarding should be these strategic elements. Look at how to promote teamwork using the scheme, because it is recognized that for organizations to succeed, we need teamwork more than individual effort. Look at how you involve employees in the rollout of the scheme and communicate about the scheme. When you do that, you get it right. So what are the types of PRP schemes? We have individual merit schemes. Individual merit schemes will be where targets are set and the individual performs, and depending on how they will perform, we will rate their performances and use the results to award a salary increment. Usually, there will be a rating scale in place that you know, depending on how you will perform. If your performance is rated outstanding, rating A, you get a salary increment of, say, 10%. If your performance is rated very good or B, you get an increment of between 7 to 9%. If your performance is rated good, you get maybe 4, 5, 6%. Average 3%. Poor, no increment. So this rating scale is there even as we are setting the performance targets. So the individual is working knowing that how they will be rated will determine the increment they will get. Is it outstanding, very good, good, average, poor? So salary increment is based on your performance rating. So you are driven to work, meet your targets, and you will get your increments based on how your performances will be rated. The challenge would come in, or maybe many schemes, what they will do, they will combine the performance rating and adjustments to salary, call adjustments. So that you will have a situation where maybe supposing 2 employees, one gets a rating outstanding and one gets a rating average. They were started at 100,000, both of them. So this person who gets outstanding will get an increment, maybe 10% based on performance and 5% based on cost of living adjustments. In effect, an increment of 15%, taking them to 115,000. That is 15% of 100,000 will yield 15,000. So their next basic, or the basic for the next period, will be 115. This person who got an average rating will get 3% for performance and 5% for cost of living adjustment, giving us 8%. So 8% of 100 is 8,000. 100,000 is 8,000. So you started at 100,000, but after 1 year, somebody is at 115, another one is at 108. Performance based on merit. Yes, Stacy.
Mwalimu, I have a question. The performance-based pay, is it not a one-off thing? Is it like when you get 115, do you continue from there, or is it for the period only?
So say in 2020, your performances were outstanding, then you get your increment. When you get to 2021, your basic salary shifts to 115. And the other person is at 108. If they retain the same performance rating, 2021, they get the same rating. The other one will be at about 116, ule mwingine around 130. So the increment you get is pegged on your performance assessment. So you have a situation where the employee can progress very fast to an extent that you almost like distort the pay arrangement in your organization. Now, part B is individual bonus schemes. For individual bonus scheme, what we are saying is we set performance targets. And the individuals work towards achieving these targets. And the results will be used to pay a bonus. So you may have hypothetical ratings: outstanding, very good, good, average, poor. And the bonus that will be paid. This person who is outstanding gets a bonus 100% of their basic. Person who is very good gets 75%. Somebody good, 50%. Average, 25%. Different schemes will have different percentages for computing bonus, but it's usually a percentage of the basic pay. So the two individuals, one gets a rating of outstanding, gets 100% of their base pay as a bonus, which is 100,000. The other one gets an average rating, 25% of their base pay, which is 25,000 as a bonus. So you may have a situation where salary does not increase based on performance rating. It is maybe cost of living adjustment, but they get a bonus at the end of the year. It is the bonus which is pegged on performance rating. So the two employees, the person who gets an outstanding rating may end up with a bonus of 100,000. The person who gets an average rating may end up with a bonus of 25,000. But their salaries are not adjusted based on performance rating. When you do that, then you have the individual bonus schemes. So that saves us from increasing salaries of employees, because once you increase the basic, then you will not tell us that in 2020 your performances were rated outstanding. We increased your basic so that you shifted to to 115,000. So 2021, because your performances are weak or weaker, we bring you back to 100,000. No. Once you shift the basic, it continues or you sustain it at that rate. But for the individual bonus, you will only pay the bonus during the year or during the period that the performances of the employee warrant the bonus being paid. So if in 2021, the performance warrant a bonus, you pay the bonus. If 2022, the performance will not warrant a bonus, you will not pay the bonus. So you don't adjust the basic salary, but what the employee gets at the end of the year is a bonus. So maybe the two employees, one gets outstanding 100% is 100,000. So in December, they take home 200,000. And this person who gets average 25%. So in December, they take home 125, which is 100,000, the basic, plus 25,000, the bonus. I hope it's clear. Number two is competence-related scheme. The performance-related scheme, you reward employees based on their actual performance. But competence-related schemes, these are schemes where you want to reward employees based on their ability to perform now and in the future. That you look at the competence levels that the individual has. Then you are rewarding them for these competence they possess, because you recognize that you will need these competence at some point in the future. That is why you may recruit 2 employees, but at different salaries, because you recognize one to be of a higher competence level than the other. So that as we are talking competence-related schemes, we are looking at schemes where you identified the competence levels that employees have. You ask yourself, what are the competences we are willing as an organization to pay for? What is it that we are looking at that the employees should possess for which we are willing to pay? Is it behavior? Or is it certain competence that employees should have? So that once we identify these behavioral attributes or the competences that we'll be seeking to reward employees for, then you structure a package where you will recognize and reward these persons who have the competences that you are looking for better than you will reward everyone else with the same qualification. The challenge is, it is a complex approach how to measure the competences for which you will be rewarding differently. That when we start talking about all the salaries we are paying would be based on how you will be negotiating and what as management we will feel you will bring onto the table. That would be critical. Competence. Number 3 is contribution. That contribution is a mix of performance measures and competence. Contribution will be looking at how much the individual brings onto the table that not only influences their individual performance, but also the performances of other members of the team. That what is the extent at which they use the behavior, the competence they have to uplift the other members of the team to perform and deliver. So that contribution captures the full scope of what people do, the levels of skills and competence they have, which they apply into their work and contribute to achieving long-term goals of the entire organization. That you will look at a football team as goalkeepers. Of the 11 players, there's a goalkeeper in the field. And there's another goalkeeper seated in the bench. It is not almost always that the one who is in the field playing is a better goalkeeper than the one seated in the bench. But probably the one seated in the bench contributes much more to the team than just goalkeeping. Maybe when they're in the field, they guide the other players. They almost act as another coach in the field. So you feel they are contributing more, that you may have a better goalkeeper in the bench, but this one that you feel contributes much more to the team other than just goalkeeping. They support the other defenders. They guide them. They warn them when there is danger coming. They plan, they arrange how they are positioned so that they better defend the goal. Contribution. So we look at your performance, the skills and competence that you have, and the extent to which you utilize that to uplift the performances of the individual and for the betterment, not only of you and achieving of your targets, but the entire team, the entire organization. Contribution. So that when you are talking contribution, how you want to reward people for their performance and their competence and the extent to which they can affect the overall performance of the individual and teams and organization. Scheme number 4 is a skills-based scheme. For the skills-based scheme, what we are saying is you structure a reward system such that you've identified the critical skill set that individuals ought to have in the organization. Then the package that you will be rolling out would be recognizing this skill set. We say is knowledge-based, so that the higher the skills that the individual possesses, the better they will be rewarded. So how much you are paid varies, changes, improves based on the skills and competence that you possess. So what happens? You'll define what are the skills modules that you need. Then you arrange them in a hierarchical manner so that that person with the higher skills, you get paid at a better rate. That you get, say, these craftsmen who've studied and through NEET, electrical wireman, they have of different grades. You get a grade 2 wireman and a master craftsman. You will not pay them at the same rate because one has a higher skills qualification set than the other one of grade 2. So the skills you possess determines how you will be graded and rewarded. So what we need is we want to be able to identify these skills, rank the skills, then determine which skills are needed for what kind of job and what rewards we'll be giving for individuals based on the skills that they possess. Number 5 is on service-related pay. That those in the public sector, your scheme is predominantly service-related. That the increment that you get increases with the number of years of service. So your HR officers, grade 1, no, in the same grade, that person with 2-3 years or experience earns much more than that person who lacks the experience. So we recognize and we reward you for the number of years experience that you possess. There is that realization that with the high experience levels that you have, then you bring in more, you contribute more to our organization. The last scheme under the individual schemes, we call it for sales staff. That you have situations where you have staff who do sales. And the organization wonders, how do you compensate these staff who do sales? So you want to have a scheme in place where you don't just reward the sales staff on commission, but you do a package where there is some retainer the sales staff will receive. Then a good chunk of their money they get on commission basis. That then makes the sales staff to be able to engage in the sales without neglecting critical elements like after sales service, encouraging them to do sales without focusing on what we call high pressure selling. High pressure selling is where they make sales at all costs. That you tell them you work somewhere, they will pressure you and pester you until you buy, just because they are keen on getting their commission. That when you meet them the following day, you wonder, is this really what I wanted to buy? But by then you've already signed in and bought the item. You want to guarantee them some earnings that in a given period, when they are not able to achieve their earnings target because of factors external to them, then there's some retainer that they get. So you reward sales staff based on a commission and a retainer if you have a good structured sales staff incentive scheme. So there are outlines of what you need to consider as an organization, the questions you want to ask yourself if you want to successfully implement an individual-based contingency schemes, and how you want to be able to develop the individual-based scheme 10-step approach. Analyze the culture, strategy, and existing processes. Decide on the contingent-based pay scheme that is appropriate. Set out to demonstrate how you will assess contributions and reward. Communicate the aims to the managers, staff, and the people involved. Determine how the scheme will operate. Develop a performance management process. Communicate the intention to line managers and staff. Pilot test the scheme, train, and then launch the scheme. You do that, you get it right with individual-based PRP schemes. Now, the last bit of the session focuses on team-based, not the individual. Here you are looking at how to be able to reward teams and not individuals. The benefit of team-based schemes: you will encourage teamwork, you will encourage focusing on team goals and priorities, you will encouraging working flexibly within teams, you will be encouraging the team members to be multi-skilled so as to help one another. You will come up with an incentive for teams to be able to collectively work on improving their performance, and also the less effective team members will be boosted by the other team members to work towards meeting team standards. But the challenges with team-based reward schemes, how to build cohesive and mature teams, is a challenge. Individuals normally resent the fact that their efforts will be shared with others. And ultimately, when you have team-based schemes, then peer pressure comes in. Their weaker performers who will be compelled by others will start feeling and telling them, you are the one dragging us behind. So also uplift your standards. So conditions for there to be team-based schemes: identify the teams, have the teams well established, be clear on the work that the team members should be focusing on, be clear on team targets and standards of performance, be clear on the acceptable measures of performance, and the formula that would, is to be used in rewarding the team members. Then they work towards meeting their rewards. That when you talk about team-based reward schemes, that you want to reward collectively within the organization, there will be gain sharing as a scheme, where resulting from the efficiency of the labor, added value, added productivity of the labor, you will determine the gain and share between the employees. There is profit sharing schemes, where organizations that roll out a profit sharing scheme, you recognize that employees have worked, they've earned a salary, but they've contributed more to the company than just the salary that you give them deserves. So what you want to do when you roll out a profit sharing scheme, you want to achieve certain objectives. Can we stimulate greater interest on the employees about the affairs of the company beyond the salary pursuit? Can you encourage better cooperation between employees and management? Can you recognize that employees have a moral right to share in the profits that they've helped generate? Can you demonstrate as a company that you have the goodwill towards the company and what it does? Can you encourage employees to be able to identify closely with the company so that they have a common concern for the company and its progress? You do that, you get it right in terms of profit sharing schemes. Now, profit sharing schemes are administered in primarily 4 options. There's a cash option, where a portion of the profits is calculated, determined, and the employees get their share as you administer, say, bonuses. There's a stock option, where a portion of your profits is determined and is used to acquire shares of the company stock, so that it becomes part of the share ownership scheme. That when you roll out a share ownership scheme, you will give employees the option to maybe save their profit share in the form of shares. They become shareholders of the companies, or as an incentive, once you've determined their profit share, you give them the equivalent in terms of shares of the company. When that is done, they become owners of the company and not just employees. We have the approved deferred share trusts, where the profit share is determined, is allocated in a trust fund. It is used to acquire shares which are distributed, which belong to the employees in predetermined ratio based on the performance measures and grades, etc. That ultimately, when you will want to exit your organization, you will get your share of your shares from the scheme. But so long as you are still an employee, they are managed by these trusts. And there may be restrictions as to how you can use access and be able to trade in such shares when you are still an employee, because you want to hold on to you. Retention is the primary focus. Then there are schemes that combine part of your share, you get cash, and part in the form of stock. So when you look at these cash schemes, there has to be clarity for the scheme to succeed. Who is eligible to join and share? Usually employees, excepting the directors will be there over the at least 1 year prior to the period for which the profit share is being worked out. What is a formula to be used to calculate and determine the profit share? What is a method that will be used to distribute the profit share every individual will receive, and what amount will be distributed? Usually, the employees will be entitled to receive a percentage of the net profit after tax. Then this is shared between the eligible employees. And we talked about the timing of the distribution should be clear. Like, say Safaricom declares profit 32 billion. They should pay, if they have such a scheme, pay their employees their profit share at about the same time. Because when we see them, we know this person works for Safaricom. We see the 32 billion. And your siblings start asking for money and all. So pay them immediately. You declare the profit so that there is that good correlation between the profit and the declaration of the profit and the employees getting their share. The last scheme is for executives. Usually executives will not be part of the profit sharing scheme for employees. They will have their own scheme for executives where they will get a percentage of the net profit after tax, no, before tax. Then they share amongst the few executives in the company, because there is a realization that these persons, it is the strategies they formulate, the leadership they provide that will ultimately lead the company to achieving the profit targets that it will have realized. So the success is dependent on these executives. So the question is, how do you want to compensate them? So you'll come up with a scheme where a percentage of the net profit before tax is worked out and then shared by the 5, 6, 7 executives in the company. So that this may further be structured based on the basic pay, you get your share of the profit, or the executive is, we assess the performance, and depending on the performance rating, they get their share. You do that, you get it right as part of your contingency-based schemes. And that should bring us to the end of contingency-based scheme. So my expectation is you will be interacting with the material, and if there are queries or clarification, feel free to raise using WhatsApp, email, or whatever other formal channel that we have. Thank you.